Hey there guys, how's it going? My name is Sumedh Chatterjee from the Flow Zone Academy, and I'm a flow state coach, which means that I help you feel better and perform better. Today I'm going to be speaking to you guys about the 7 principles of Huna, which is Hawaiian spirituality. Now listen, I'm not an expert in Hawaiian spirituality, okay? So this is from what I've heard and this is my personal take on it. But I think it's a profound insight and a perspective into a way of thinking that is very, very different and high vibrational. So I thought I'd share it with you guys. So now, if you guys know anything about Hawaii, you know about Aloha. So the real meaning of the word aloha, as far as I understand it, is alo is to be in the presence of, and ha is a letting go, the breath, right? The breath. So what is particularly interesting about Hawaiian spirituality and all of this stuff, I credit this to Sergei Kalile King. I'm no expert here, but this is kind of where I've gotten this wisdom from, as well as just learning a little bit more about it in myself. Again, it always comes back to the self, right? All of these teachings leads you back to what's going on within you and how we can create that internal ecosystem for us to thrive, right? So I love how the Hawaiian system believes in giving and receiving instead of giving and taking. We live in a culture that's super transactional. It's all about taking and giving and taking and giving. But if we can look at it rather as receiving, a receptive energy instead of a taking energy, it really starts to change the whole ball game, right? So what we put in, the more we get out, leaving a place more whole than when we step out of it. So carrying this radiance, this vibe with you. It's a connection of all things which you can't really touch, right? It's this essence. Similar to, like in Star Wars, they have the Force, how I say, may the flow be with you, may the Force be with you, right? So the Force is like this invisible presence or this power which we can feel. And similarly, the Hawaiian people feel this across Hawaii. It's like this power. Ha is like the part of all creation, right? This feeling of like, we came from that release. We came from that that pleasure of an orgasm, from the sperm to the egg, and we were born, right? So if we think of that and really look at the significance of that, then we can start to understand this. So let's get into the 7 principles, okay? Have you guys ever heard of Huna? Okay, who's ever heard of it? I would definitely love to talk to different experts about this and maybe even invite you onto my podcast. So if you are listening to this and you are either Hawaiian or you know anything about this or you come across this video, I'd love to speak to you further about this. But anyway, let's get started. I know there's a lot of controversy also around this of not being of Hawaiian origin, and I understand that, but I want to focus in on, the practical applications of these principles, and maybe you can educate me on them a little bit more. But here's what I know, and here's what I want to bring to you guys. So, first of all, I just want to read out a few of them, and then we can dive deeper into what these mean, okay? So the first one is Ike. Okay, I-K-E, okay? So basically, Ike is an understanding that the world is what you think it is, which kind of reminds me of like, in the Kaibalion, they have mentalism, right? All is mind kind of mentality. So, if the world is what you think it is, that means if you think the world is a cruel place, it'll end up being a cruel place for you. If you think the world is a kind place, it'll end up being kind for you. So are you living in paranoia or pronoia, right? The opposite of that. It's really dependent on how we perceive the world to be. The world is what you think it is. So we are observers and interpreters of our world. We are the people who make the final decision on what this means to us. We're the meaning-making machines in our own minds and our hearts. We attach meaning and emotion to a situation, therewith defining that experience. When we change our perspective or when your future outcomes are changed, it's because you approached those things very different. You have this power to change first your perceived experience, and then through changing the perceived experiences, when you change the way you look at something, the thing you look at changes, right? You can do that and actually change your future. The Hawaiians believe of life being almost a dream, and this is very interesting because Hindus also have this kind of understanding of like life being a dream, and that at this point you might wake up from the dream and realize, hey, this is all a dream, this is all an illusion. But in essence, this truth as we define it as is, the understanding that Maya or that illusion and knowing that like that's not the truth. And the next one we have is Kala. Kala means there are no limits. Everything is possible. Okay. Now this sounds kind of like a cliche, like slogan, like achieve the impossible. Everything is possible. Like, but what does this no limits mentality really mean? There are infinite possibilities. We live in an unlimited universe, but the unlimited universe needs creative limits to allow us to experience anything, right? So therefore, this limitation or separation of the color spectrum and the sound spectrum is useful, and these creative limitations get us to experience night and day, or color and sound, or music or noise, and all of these other things. So, think about a game, right? A game is based upon the rules. So if we didn't have the rules, if someone's playing chess and they don't play by the rules, they move the pieces however they want, then it messes up the game for the rest of the other people, right, who are trying to play with them. In a sense, we need these creative limits, is what the Hawaiians believe in terms of this, and understanding those creative limits can get us to understand this world of duality as well. And I think that's an incredible way of understanding this, as well as knowing when to let go. Would I be willing to let it go? So the next one is Makia, or energy flows where attention goes. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar with this, or have seen lots of quotes on Instagram based on this. Attention goes where energy flows, man. Emotions are energy in motion, as well as understanding that if we can focus on something, so let's say you start a task, right? You focus on all the things that are bad with it. You're actually draining your energy. So you're not giving it enough energy to flow. But with positivity, or if you're looking at an activity, you're looking at, man, what will this awesome outcome be from doing this task? That will give you more energy reserve, right? It'll like tap into maybe this kind of invisible energy reserve that the Chinese sometimes believe. We call it jing, which we sometimes need in terms of, danger, or situations where maybe we feel completely depleted or fasted completely, and it's our survival. Energy flows where attention goes. I think that's really important. It's like, where are we allowing ourselves to expand our energy with our focus, right? If we can put our focus directly onto the present moment and the task, that moves into the next one called Manawa, right? Which means now is the moment of power. And Manawa has the word now in it. That's how I remember Manawa, right? So Manawa is basically, and again, guys, like, look, I don't speak Hawaiian. I've always wanted to go there because I believe that Hawaii has this kind of feminine energy, and that's why I think that there's a lot of dogs fighting outside, huh? That's really interesting. I love Hawaii because of its feminine energy, and that's like Aloha, and like the kind of, the way it's depicted is like this kind of, notice there probably is like a lot of history behind it, a lot of trauma behind it, and the people really like falling in love with the land and all this kind of stuff, this deep, profound things related with Hawaii, but also like the hula girls as they show them the waving around. It's like this movement, it's this constant movement of really being in touch and in love with nature. And I think that kind of energy, a lot of people go there for vacation to get that kind of freedom or that feeling of expansiveness that oftentimes feminine energy can give you. It's really interesting to tune into that feeling of like, now is the moment of power, because only in the now can we experience anything. We can't experience things in the past, we can't experience things in the future. We can only expect like what's going to happen, and we can make predictions. If you get bored in your energy, going back to Makia, right? Energy flows where attention goes. If you get bored, it'll get you nowhere. So some questions I like to ask myself is, what's funny about this? How can I make myself laugh? What's really fascinating about this moment? How can I break my own record to make this even more effective than before? How can I have lots more fun doing this? How can I use my strengths doing this? And that focus on what am I focusing on right now? Is my focus empowering me or disempowering me, and really helping me to move forward, right? So the best possible place is where you are right now. And so if you can make the most of your now, it can really start to expand over into other areas of your life. If you can have a keen focus on the present moment, it can really allow you to see a lot more possibility and opportunity and kind of spread out in terms of that, right? So aloha, again, to love is to be happy with, or to be in the presence of breath, right? And understanding that it's this love breath, right? If you understand that, okay, if you're happy, if you have a feeling of joy, that's associated with the feeling of love. And love can be a very intense emotion, but it's more of love being a connector, right? A connector of this whole amazing locality of Hawaii, but also it's like this energy of just like being connected with everything. And I think that's a wonderful understanding. It's almost like namaste. The light in me sees the light in you and appreciates that, acknowledges that. So in the same way, aloha is almost like, man, I feel you, I get you, I see you, I care for you, you're my brother, right? That kind of connection, I think, is just such a amazing, recognition, and I think it's very powerful. Aloha, and then we have mana. Mana in a lot of video games is used as like a thing like mana points, right? So I think that it's obvious that mana is related to power, and mana means that all power comes from within, so it's inside of you. You've got to tap into that, a power source in a sense. So all this thermal power, natural power, but maybe with solar power, all sorts of power sources were made by humans, right? We took the sun and we got power out of it, solar power, right? But this was using our mind, our internal technology to construct this thing. It's this wonderful understanding that, yeah, all power comes from within. Even the power of how we're able to, some people get power through crystals. Some other people get power through just looking at amazing art gallery. So we get power through different sources, but understanding that all that power comes from our own creation. It comes from our own internal being. So all power comes from within is a wonderful way of looking at this. And lastly, I just want to mention pono, which is such a cute word, right, to describe it. And I don't want to sound like condescending or anything, but pono is such a cute word. And, it reminds us that effectiveness is the measure of truth, which is an amazing, concept. So the way I think about effectiveness being the measure of truth is, in essence, truth is what you define it as such, right? There's no absolute truth, and people who give you an absolute truth, oftentimes they'll have a skewed idea of what that truth is. And so the question isn't whether a system is true or not. The real question is, how good is that system working for you? Right? So there's no right and wrong, good or bad, true or false, but is it working or is it not working, right? So if you have an idea in your mind that, oh man, I have a soul family and that's working for you, great, right? That's pono, man. Like if you use that within you and you were able to apply that, that's amazing. But if you have some other desire or this idea within you that isn't serving you, but you completely believe it, it's a part of your belief system, but it's still sabotaging you, well, I would say, is it really true though? If it's not working for you, if it's not making you feel good, if it's not effective, is it really the truth? Now that's something to consider, and I think it's a very philosophical question. I think these principles can definitely be taken into the mind realm and into a philosophical domain. But I think as we explore these concepts a little bit more and really start to understand our own take of them, we can really start to implement these in our own life. And the way you can do this is, let's go through them again. The world is what you think it is. Ike, Kala, there are no limits, everything is possible. Makia, energy flows where attention goes. Manawa, now is the moment of power. Aloha, to love is to be happy with. Mana, all power comes from within. Pono, effectiveness is the measure of truth. Once we can start to truly embody and live from this kind of philosophy, I think you'll be a pretty flowing person. So I want to leave it there. Have an amazing day. May the flow be with you, and stay legend.